Pro Football Playbook, presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network. Your source for team news, draft needs, player profiles and rankings, full Senior Bowl, Combine, and NFL draft coverage. News, analysis, discussion. It's in the playbook. Now, here is your host, sports journalist Bill Alvstad, and featured analyst Keith Myers. Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Football Playbook. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. We're glad to see you. Welcome in, Keith. Let's talk some AFC this week.
Yeah, it's definitely the more competitive of the two conferences because like the NFC, you've got like the 5 teams at the top, a couple of teams in the middle, and then a bunch of bad teams. Whereas with the AFC, it feels wide open this year. You've got, 13 teams that are all, within 2 games of a playoff spot here at the, the mid-season mark. It's a lot more fun to have that many teams in it. So
yeah, well, it was an interesting week.
It really was, yeah.
Because a lot of teams just kind of got blown up a little bit. Momentum's kind of shifted. The tide is turning for a couple of teams, like Kansas City, for example. That Monday night game against the Raiders just really kind of surprised me. I thought the Raiders would actually put up a pretty decent fight because Kansas City was struggling. They were having some problems with their offensive line. Mahomes wasn't being consistent in being able to get the ball out and getting the ball spread out all over the place. And in this game, it just kind of all came together for Kansas City, which makes me think that they're just kind of coming up at the right time right now.
Yeah, and I think, you also have to look at the rest of that division because we knew going into the year that division was going to be good. And every team in that division is currently at 500 or better. Yeah. But the Chiefs at 6-4 lead the division, but the Chargers at 5-4, the Raiders at 5-4, and the Broncos at 5-5. They're all right there.
What did you think about the Chargers losing to the Vikings 27-20?
It was really unexpected to me. I expected the Chargers to handle that game, and especially early on, it looked like that was going to happen, but just couldn't sustain anything in the second half, and just gave the Vikings a chance to pull that one out. And
sometimes the Vikings surprise you a little bit. They just haven't been doing great this year. Nothing really special about the team on offense or defense. And all of a sudden they just put together a complete game and they can take one from you. Now, and the Chargers, conversely, I thought they would have been a little bit better on defense this year. And their defense just hasn't quite stepped up this year. No. The offense is okay, but seemingly they need the defense a little bit more than people thought. Everyone thought Justin Herbert was going to come in and kind of carry that team. But it does show that they do need a competent defense to kind of make that team complete.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're only going to go so far without a defense. And no matter how well Herbert plays, if they can't stop teams, eventually all he takes is a mistake here or there or a penalty, and that kills a drive, and then you lose a game. And that's what we're seeing happen with the Chargers a lot. Is they're just not good enough on that side of the ball. I will also say that it's not like Herbert hasn't played perfectly. Like it's not just like, oh well, it's nothing's on him. He hasn't taken that big step forward that I think everyone really expected from him. But it's not like he's played poorly either. What
were 2 games this week that really kind of surprised you? That you thought, no problem, these guys are going to win this game, no problem, and it just didn't turn out that way?
Well, you how do you not start with the Dolphins beating the Ravens? Right. I mean, the Dolphins have looked just bad throughout most of this year, and I mean the Dolphins lost to the Jaguars. But then, and the Ravens have been good, but then 22-10, Dolphins upset the Ravens. I was,
yeah, that was last Thursday too, by the way, because it seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
But right. Yeah. And how about the Patriots?
That's the other
game?
one.
It's like the Patriots somehow or another are putting together a season with their rookie quarterback who's just been playing outstanding. He's been mentioned in the kind of rookie of the year discussions.
And
he should be. And the Browns, conversely, were going to be right there. They were there last year. They had a great run last year. I mean, they were just on the precipice of getting into that that title game and making some really good progress this year to get over the hump. And they've just regressed this year. And this game, 45-7, was just a complete wake up call for them, I would imagine. And they're currently at 5-5. I mean, just 500.
Well, yeah, I mean, 5-5, and they started out good. I mean, they were one of the better teams in the AFC the first 3 weeks, and then you just kept expecting, okay, they get tripped up here and you get tripped up there.
It's their defense too. Their defense has allowed 241 points so far this year.
Yeah,
that's
their defense
a lot
just
of
isn't
points.
getting it done. And I mean, they are banged up, and that's part of it. And their quarterback is dealing with a foot injury and a knee injury, and that torn labrum in his other shoulder that needs surgery, but he's going to try and play through it until until the season's over and that kind of stuff. But it's just a situation where that team, plus the infighting with Odell Beckham Jr. and all of that mess and everything, like it doesn't surprise me that they're struggling right now, because it's hard to overcome that kind of stuff. And the Patriots, on the other hand, like they were a team that did not look like a very good football team early on, but they are starting to really put it together. I mean, just the quality of, the way they play and how they execute and all that kind of stuff. Bill Belichick has been, for the last decade or so, kind of thought of as one of, if not the best coach in NFL history. And he's kind of showing that this year. This has been a fantastic coaching job from him to get that defense going when it wasn't early and to really find a way to win behind the rookie quarterback.
So you talked at the beginning of the show about how the AFC is just really competitive, and deep this year compared to the NFC. There's a lot of NFC teams that are still in the kind of hunt with 3 or 4 wins. And that's not the case in the AFC. Let's talk about the teams closer to the top and where they sit kind of in the playoff run. You got the Tennessee Titans at 8-2. What do you think about Tennessee this year? And looks like they're really putting a case in to be the front runner to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Well, they've got 2 more wins than any other team. Only one.
And look at their strength of schedule too. The remaining way, it's their strength of schedule is the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL in the remaining games.
Yeah,
it's set up perfectly for them.
Yeah, so they've got 2 wins more than the other teams, because they've got 8, and the second most wins is 6 by 3 different teams. Actually 4 different teams, because the Patriots made it to there. But you have, and then you've got an easy schedule for them. What they need to do is they need to stay healthy. That's true for every team, and they need to find ways to make sure that they continue and not let off the gas, because everything's working right now. But you could make a case that, hey, perhaps this team is peaking too early. How do you keep the pedal down when you're 2 games up on the rest of the division, halfway through, not the division, but the whole rest of the conference. And not start to coast too early and have things fall apart before the playoffs get here. They really need to find a way to continue to push and continue to get better and all of that. But they are in a great shape right now.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for them, going forward with Derrick Henry missing, and to be able to ride that into the playoffs, I think is a really big thing. We'll see if they can continue to have that running success going forward as well. Let's take a look at the 3 other division leaders right now, all with 6 wins. Buffalo Bills. I think everybody thought that Buffalo would be there at the end, but are you surprised at all at 6-3? They're leading the AFC East, but that's not a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not a good division ever, and it never has been. I mean, usually it's the Patriots at the top and 3 bad teams. Now it's the Bills at the top. The Patriots are actually doing pretty well, and 2 really bad teams.
Yeah.
But so the Bills have only given up 135 points so far. The second best in the entire AFC is the Patriots at 177. Like that's like 50 point, or it's 40 points, 42 points difference. That's I mean, think about that. That's like, they are probably the best defense in the NFL.
Well, in addition, Keith, they started 5-1. They've lost a couple of tough games. They lost to the
really
Titans. They lost to the Titans, and then they lost to the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know, like, how, I guess every team every year seems to have one of those games where.
Well, Allen just had a really clunker game. I mean, he's been playing fantastic for most of the year, but he just played awful. He was missing guys. He threw a bunch of really dumb, bad interceptions. It was just a really ugly game, and just very uncharacteristic. He's been good this year, like really good, and he was good last year too. But anyways, he really just had a clunker. And you know what? Occasionally, a player will do that. You just got to write it off and move on. I don't think that game does not bother me in terms of feeling that the Bills are probably the best team in the AFC, not the Titans, but
interesting. Down the stretch, we'll see.
Yeah. I still think they're the best team, mostly because of their defense, and I trust their offense to continue to score. But it's worth, watching with them, because you can't have clunkers like that against good teams, or in the playoffs or anything like that. You've got to be consistent, and that kind of inconsistency does make you wonder a little bit.
Baltimore Ravens sitting at 6-3, first place in the AFC North. Mm-hmm. They got shocked. You mentioned it against the Dolphins last Thursday night, but they've got good quality wins as well against the Chiefs and the Chargers. But then they lost to the Raiders and the Bengals. I mean, they've been kind of up and down. It seems like it's what opponents are that they're facing. It seems like everything is riding on how they finish, and they've got a really fairly difficult schedule, I should say, remaining. One of the harder remaining schedules out there. And so I'm curious to see if Baltimore is a serious player this year, or if they kind of fall back a little bit as time goes on.
Well, I mean, they're a good team, but they're
always going to be competitive.
Yeah, they will.
Nice,
they're well
Team.
coached.
Yes,
yep.
Right.
They go as Jackson goes, and unfortunately, they need some offensive weapons around him to help him just be.
I'm surprised they didn't go all in on Beckham myself.
Yeah, that was a surprise, but whatever. Here's one of the things that's interesting. So they have the same record as the Bills, right? Both teams are 6-3. The Bills have net points, so right, points for minus points against of 145. The Ravens, at the same record, their net points is 14.
Yes.
Yeah. So
close games.
Yeah.
Close games. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. So they're winning close games and they're losing by double digits, and that's what happens. You end up there. That doesn't speak to a team that's ready to just make a deep run into the playoffs. It really doesn't. So I think that they're going to win the division. They're not really being pushed by anyone, but they're a very questionable. Like, are they really a contender team? To me, right now, they need to find something else besides Jackson doing everything. I feel the
same way about Kansas City, although you gotta give it to a team with that level of experience that they're going to be able to find a way to put it together and finish strong. They're at 6-4. They've got a difficult schedule ahead. New England's at 6-4 as well, but they're second place in the AFC East. That's the difference in their seeding right now. And then you've got a couple of 5-win teams, Pittsburgh Steelers and Los Angeles Chargers. Pittsburgh has a strength of schedule that's at 600 strength of schedule, and the LA Chargers are at 0.473 remaining strength of schedule. So that'll be interesting to see which one of those second place teams can kind of rise up and get the better seeding, as there are 7 playoff teams this year.
Okay. Honestly, how weird is it to say the LA Chargers?
I know, right?
Like, I know that came
out of my mouth and I was like, what?
It's been a couple of years, and the LA Rams I was able to get behind because they used to be the LA Rams like years ago,
Right.
and
Yes.
and
Right.
so they're just back in LA where it felt like they kind of belong. But the LA Chargers, I just have a hard time saying it.
You know what it's going to take. It's going to take a really good year and a championship, and people start to get behind that, and it kind of comes. But it'll be interesting because I thought that they would be maybe one win ahead of where they're at right now this year, and kind of more strongly viewed in a conversation of being a playoff kind of contender.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm not sure if they have the roster to really compete with Tennessee or even New England at this point. In the battle of young quarterbacks, you've got the rookie against the second-year pro. That would be an interesting battle to see. But what do you think about the bottom dwellers, the guys that maybe have a chance, like Cincinnati and Las Vegas and Indianapolis and Cleveland and Denver? They're all sitting at 5 wins. There are teams in the NFC that would love to have those records that the AFC has for their kind of middling teams. But there's 12 teams now with 5 wins in the AFC, and only 7 are going to get in. Some of those teams that are above the fray now are going to fall below, and some of these teams below now are going to rise up. Are there any teams there that you think might have a shot?
Well, the Chargers are a team that I would think of, and the Bengals too. Cincinnati, they've lost 2 in a row, so they've dropped from 5-2 to 5-4, and so everyone's kind of jumped off.
They face the Raiders in this week, so they got 2 5-4 teams going head to head this week.
That's going to be a good game. But the Bengals, they looked really good, and they still have, despite being 5-4, they're still plus 33 in the point differential. So it shows that they're they're perhaps better than their record, even with the 2 losses. They really need to find some more rhythm on offense. Things have kind of fallen apart. They were really good early on, and then they've kind of struggled to keep that consistency going. And I think that's one of the things that happens with a young quarterback and just being a young team. If they can put that back together, this is a team that can go on a run and be dangerous in the playoffs. They're going to be a team that no one wants to play.
Yeah.
The Browns, on the other hand, they're going in the other direction.
But you know who's playing the Browns this week? Detroit Lions. Detroit at Cleveland. So
it's hard to lose when you're playing against.
It's a good rebound week, right?
Notice I didn't say it's hard not to win, because the Steelers proved that to not be true, right? They didn't win against. They also didn't lose. The NFL's first tie with the Steelers and the Lions, and that that game could not have been less interesting, to be honest. That game was
one of the most interesting, and we just mentioned it, is the Cincinnati at Vegas game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be one of the more competitive games of the weekend in the AFC. The interesting game that pits an NFC team against an AFC team this week would be the Dallas Cowboys at the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's kind of the game of the week for me, in that Dallas seems to be on the precipice of kind of stepping up in the NFC as being one of the elite teams, and they have an opportunity here against Kansas City to be able to do that, but it is on the road, and Kansas City had it coming off a great game where everything came together for them.
Place to play. That is a
hard place to play. So what do you think of that Dallas Kansas City game? I mean, that seems like it's a classic waiting to happen.
Oh yeah, that game. That's the game of the week. As much as I want to watch, the 5-4 teams go at it. What I'm not, because to me
that sounded funny. I mean, it just sounded funny.
It does, but
I'm not even Cincinnati Vegas game is going to be a classic game. I think
it's a fun game. These are two teams
because those guys are fighters. Yes.
Yeah, they're fighting for that spot. Whereas the other one, these are two teams that are both probably going to go to the playoffs, and no one's really questioning it. So it's going to be a really good game because it's two good teams, but nobody's season can hinge on that game. Whereas Another loss by the Raiders, they will have lost 3 straight to drop to 500, and everyone starts being like, maybe they're just not who we thought they were, and the same is actually true of the Bengals. If they lose, they'll have lost 3 straight to drop to 500, and so you get to really start to question one of those teams.
Well, the other game that is of interest, and you can kind of put all 3 of these games in the same sort of bucket. At least the Cincinnati Vegas, it's equal on par with that. Would be the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday Night Football. That's a battle that I wouldn't mind like checking out.
What's weird about that is I didn't expect that game to be in where it is in terms of it's meaningful. I
thought Pittsburgh was going to fall down this year. I really did.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that they're 5-3-1, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. That's one of those situations where that tie could really hurt them down the stretch.
The offense is still really struggling. It's just not a good offense, but the defense has been really good, and they've played a pretty easy schedule, so that's helped. But I still expected them to be bad, and they haven't been bad. And I think that is a testament to the quality of their defense and the fact that they've got good coaching. On the other hand, I expected the Chargers to be better. So I expected this to be one of those games that we would look at this point in the year and be like, okay, we'll just give that one to the Chargers. It's kind of a meaningless game where, the team takes care of the better team takes care of business. But I don't feel that way now. The Steelers have definitely surprised. That defense is better than I expected, and the Chargers haven't been as good as I expected. So, and that defense could really give the Chargers a hard time. This is going to be a low scoring game.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. I think that you can score against Pittsburgh if you have a competent offensive game plan and you are patient, and you're able to run the ball a little bit and take your shots. And, I think, it'll be curious to see how Justin Hubert really performs in this. And Brandon Staley as head coach, I think he's one of the coach of the year candidates. I really do. Even though they're only 5-4, I think they're a very competitive 5-4 team. They're second place in the AFC. They still have to face the Chiefs again. That game against the Chiefs later on could be the deciding factor in who takes that division. It's just one of those years. I really like the AFC. It's just really a competitive year where
it's really fun.
They've lacked that for a while now. The NFC has been the conference that has just had all the premier matchups, and everybody's just clamoring to watch. And now the AFC is starting to have some of these teams
what
that
happens
are real
when
competitive.
you have most of the conference at 500 or better, because they've got a bunch of good teams, whereas the NFC has 5 good teams and a bunch of bad teams. There's some middle ones, but there's a bunch of really bad teams, and so the AFC is winning a lot of the AFC versus NFC matchups, and it's leading to just a big chunk of teams that are in the playoff hunt at 5 and better.
Yeah,
you have 12 teams fighting for 7 spots right now, and that's not the case.
And I'm here for it, because that's fun to watch down the stretch. Yeah. Now I get it. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or if you're a Chargers fan, you want your team. But as a fan in general of NFL football, it's great again to see the conference really kind of be competitive once again, and deep team wise. It just is. And the NFC is just a hot mess. For the most part. You've got some teams at the top that are just great. The Rams, you've got the Cardinals, and the Green Bay Packers. They had a tough game against Seattle at home. I thought that they could have made a larger statement in that game, and they didn't. In fact, they struggled offensively for 3 quarters before pulling that thing out. So I'm not exactly sure on the NFC. Still, nonetheless, what it will come down to is one big game at the end, and it's anybody's guess. But getting there is a competitive battle for sure. Anything else, Keith, that you want to talk about in this show?
Who are the Denver Broncos? Do we
Yeah,
know
it's
yet?
interesting, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Do we know who the Denver Broncos are? Like, is this a good team? Like they showed us,
I don't think
a
that
week
they're.
ago, or are they
I
a
don't think
bad
that
team
they're
like
a
they showed us
great
this
team.
week?
Yeah, I don't think that they're a great team. I think that they're a 500 team, and I think they'll probably be close to 500 at the end of the year and miss the playoffs.
Okay, and I'm okay. That makes sense.
And
they are 500.
they're going to be looking for a quarterback, a long-term quarterback solution, because it's
So
just
you're
not
not buying into the
Drew Lock is not there. Bridgewater's kind of a bridge, if you will, to something else, and they still have yet to figure it out. They traded away one of their best defensive players when
that
it
was
looked
weird.
like maybe they were not going to be competitive, and then now they're 5-5, and who knows, right? But I think that they're one of the worst 5-win teams out of the 12, and I don't know that they get in. I could be wrong, but that's the way I'm looking at it.
Well, they went on the road in Dallas and blew out the Cowboys. I know that it ended up being a 14-point game at 30-16, but the Cowboys' points all came in garbage time.
Doesn't it feel, though, that the Broncos are just kind of set up to fade?
Yes, but that win just has me questioning whether or not maybe they're better than we're giving them credit for. But then they turn around and they lose 30-13 to a fairly mediocre Philadelphia team. So which one are they? And I think maybe the answer is just that they're, average. They're just in the middle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, that was still such an impressive win. I don't feel like I have a great feeling for how good this team actually is.
Well, I don't think we're going to find out this week. They got to buy.
Well, yes, we're not going to find out this week. Although, hey, if you can't get a win when you're playing no one, when can you? That was a joke. So
that's funny, right?
Yeah, they're just a team. I don't know what to think about them. Trading away Von Miller in a year where you're competitive for a playoff spot is just weird. Like, I just don't get that move. I know they were like, yeah, it gave us an opportunity to recoup some stuff and salary cap, room, and he probably wasn't going to be back next year and blah, blah, blah. But for this year, you were competitive for a playoff spot and you trade away your best player. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So I wanted to mention the upcoming schedule for the show, just to capture some interest. Next show that we're doing on the NFL draft side is going to be top 10 running backs. That'll be a good show because there's some good quality running backs in this class as opposed to the quarterback class that we just talked about last week. And then we're going to do wide receivers after that and so on and so forth. And as soon as we get finished with the offense, we'll turn our attention to the defense, and we'll kind of get to about, the 1st of February with that list. And then we'll hop into the Senior Bowl and all that kind of stuff, the combine. And we'll be on our way with that NFL draft show. So stick around for that for sure. On the side where we talk about the NFL teams, which is this show, we're going to continue to kind of pay attention to who's making playoff pushes, I think, going forward for the most part. Highlighted games of the week are who's in and who's out playoff push. The NFL teams outside looking in is coming up. And then finally we'll get into the NFL playoff push, NFL playoff previews, recap shows, all that kind of stuff. So, and eventually, when the season ends, we'll cap it off with a really nice Super Bowl show. We'll get into team needs. So this show will kind of transition more into the NFL draft. We'll talk about team needs for every team, every conference. We'll do a lot of mock drafts. We'll have some guests on that speak to specific team needs as well. So when we talk about those, we'll talk about those with folks from shows in those cities that'll help us kind of diagnose all that. So you want to stick around. It's going to be a great show, great podcast. all the way through the NFL draft and beyond. But that's definitely a foreseeable future. So, okay. So until next time, you're going to follow Keith at Myers NFL. I'm at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_playbook. The website is Pro Football Playbook. There's a lot to keep track of here, and I'm doing it all off the top of my head. Pro Football Playbook is the .co is the website where we'll have all the shows, all the content. Find us on your favorite podcast app. Right now, we're on Megaphone FM and Apple Podcasts. We'll have links to those so you can find those, and also a YouTube channel. We've got the YouTube channel. We're also affiliated with the NFL Mock Draft Database website. Those folks are great. We're going to have all of our content up on there as well. So you can use their website. You can use their big boards, do some mock drafts, come into the show. We'll talk about them. We'll talk about what we're seeing as well, help you out with those. So until next time, if you hear it around the NFL, it's in the playbook.
Thanks for listening to the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. Bill is at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_playbook. Listen and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube and at our website, profootballplaybook.co.